The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to the father, "Father, give me the share of your estate that should go to me." So the father divided the property between them, and after a few days the younger man collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend to the swine. And he longed to then eat his fill of the pods on which he fed the swine, but nobody gave him any. So coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, but here I am dying of hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son, so treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went off to his father. And while he was still a way off, the father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. So he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants to quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fatted calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." Then, as the celebration began, the older brother began to come from the field, and on his way back and near the house he heard the sound of music and dancing. And he called out to one of his servants and asked what this might mean. And the servant said, "Well, your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fatted calf, because he has him back safe and sound." And the other son became angry. And when he refused to enter the house, the father came out and pleaded with him and said to the father in reply, "Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughtered the fatted calf." And he said to him, "My son, you are here with me always, and everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found." The Gospel of the Lord. Filled with compassion, coming to his senses. Well, I have to admit, I'm not being inspired much by the music that I'm hearing these days. Maybe it's part of my Lenten journey to just not have that inspiration, even though I feel like some of my own reflections have been quite rich and helpful. But there's that way in which, I don't know, music isn't just a part of that, and that's okay. I do think, though, after listening to this week's gospel and considering this latter part of the Lenten journey that we're all going into, I felt maybe it's I got to keep just moving. I did think of that song that had hit the charts a little earlier, a few months ago, called by Chapel Roan, Pink Pony Club. That Pink Pony Club, I'm just going to keep on dancing. There's a way in which I feel like maybe I'm just going to keep on moving. That song, too, is about, at least as I interpret the lyrics, it's about, I think, a daughter who's disappointing her mother with what she's chosen to do with her life, taking off and going off to L.A. So not unlike the story of today's gospel, there's a way in which, often enough, we may disappoint those in our life who have helped raise us, to some extent, here and there, because we make obviously different choices than they did. And it might be true for our own children, right? That they become other people unlike ourselves. And at times we might think we don't get that. We don't understand it. Although more often than not, I find that parents eventually come around and realize that when their children become who they need to be, They're often quite proud and sometimes even amazed and impressed. I know some parents and children who, after a lifetime of journeying together, the parent looks up to the child for what they have accomplished, for they may have imagined things that the parent never imagined for themselves, or certainly wasn't able to imagine in their own world and time in years past. So there's often enough this way in which we can arrive at a place of mutual appreciation and encouragement. Why? We do that out of love. We do that because we're willing to practice a type of compassion and openness to each other that we hear about in this gospel. And to be honest, much of what we hear right now in our world is really, really the opposite of love and compassion and mercy. It's unforgiving, resentful, grievance. This is the kind of thing that we're hearing more often than not surrounding us. On this Lenten journey, the real challenge may be to look for those things that are quite the opposite of that. I believe that if you're a Christian and you can't look for and find God giving you the grace to experience and see and practice love, compassion, and mercy, then you're doing the Christian thing poorly or completely wrong. If in your conversations and if you're talking about values, love, compassion, and mercy don't come up, you've got a serious, serious problem. You are simply missing the whole Christian message of Jesus Christ. And maybe there's something completely blocking you from that core message that Jesus of Nazareth shared with his own people. Today, Jesus is challenged. You're hanging out with sinners and tax collectors and bad people, so you must be bad people, right? Guilt by association. Jesus doesn't actually come back at them on the terms of their own argument and accusation, interestingly enough. He simply tells them a story. He tells them the story of this compassionate Father, what has become one of the most classic stories of the Gospels, one of the most defining stories of his message of the kingdom of love, that God is like this parent who's willing to express a compassion toward their own children. And if you can identify with that, then you're going to get the God that I'm presenting to you, the God that Jesus of Nazareth is sharing with them, the God that is real. So friends, I think maybe we are moving through this Lenten season, finding where and how we can get the insights that we need in order to open us up to see the graces that I really do believe God is offering each of us in this Lenten journey. Unique graces that we need right now at this point in our lives and at this time in history. You and I need to look for those graces, find them, and accept them because they're being offered to us. This story and this image of a compassionate father, a parent who understands that their child is always their child, no matter what, no exceptions, that this image of compassion as a practice of love and as an expression of that mercy which we should all end up practicing to each other and with each other, if we're not seeing that as part of our Lenten journey, we need to look a little more deeper. We need to look more deeply into what God is offering us in these last weeks of the Lenten season so that we can, in fact, unfold and maybe unearth and unblock whatever it is that may be holding us back from seeing the gifts, the graces you and I are going to receive. May we continue and come to our senses by understanding that love, compassion, and mercy are very much a part of our Lenten journey because they're a part of who we are and how we can be the Christians, the people that God has made us to be. Amen.